Hey guys, Trevor with Shadow Systems, Technical Tuesday. We're in my office right now because there's auditors in the building auditing things. We're gonna look at the trigger housing and assembly with the trigger bar, okay? This is the complete guts that are inside the frame that make the gun fire. I wanna talk about this assembly because I've talked to our customer service people, and of all the problems that come in that are sort of the dumbest problems, the most easily solved problems, they are ones related to this assembly. And usually what's happened is somebody has done a detail strip where they've taken their frame apart for some reason. I don't know, maybe they're cleaning way beyond the regular field strip process, or they've tried a new part, they want to put a connector in, or they've messed with a different bar, I don't know what. But it just is, they've taken the gun apart and put it back together, and in putting the assembly back together, they make this mistake. Don't feel bad, by the way, I've done this before when I was working on guns back in the day and didn't really know about it. It's extremely unlikely that it's going to come from here that way because we're so sensitive to it and it gets checked so many times and test fire and everything else. So it's probably something else that has happened, but I want you to know about it. You can check your gun, make sure it's squared away. Certainly check it after you've worked on your gun, okay? So here's the deal. This is the assembly that I'm talking about, and specifically we're focused in on this spring. That is the trigger return spring. And the mistake that people are making during the reassembly process is they get the coil at the end, the hook, canted off to one side like that. So rather than being centered on the bar where it belongs, it's cocked off to one side. And then it goes into the trigger housing misaligned or incorrectly and gets assembled that way and stays that way, okay? So one more time, this is correct where it's centered, and this is incorrect where it is not. And that's all it takes to create a whole bunch of extra drag and sometimes a failure to reset or just weird trigger pull stuff. So I can't emphasize how common this mistake is. And it's, again, you can see how easy it is to do. Now, once the trigger is assembled correctly, I don't want anybody to think it can just spontaneously happen because it's under constant tension. It will stay in its groove. It doesn't change or fall out or something. It's always because it was put together incorrectly. So again, cant it off to one side. All right, I'm gonna actually draw it on the board a little bigger so it's easier to see. So let's grab a frame first just to orient everybody to what I'm talking about. We're gonna live in the back of a gun here for just a minute. Pay attention to the silver cross of the trigger bar, and that will help orient you to the blue trigger bar on the board. All right, so I'm holding the gun like this. I see my little cross of the trigger bar, and there it is on the gun. So the purple is the trigger housing and ejector. There's the trigger bar. So the spring lives basically under the trigger bar from this view. So the hook at this end is coiled up toward the shooter. So if I look at a trigger housing, I should see the coil coming up toward me like this in the back. All right, so underneath the trigger bar, here comes the rest of the spring. And then on this side, this is the spot that you're trying to look at. This is the spot that lives just down inside the trigger housing at the front. All you should see is the profile of the wire on the front of the bar. You shouldn't ever see the side of the coil hooked off to the side like that. Okay, this is wrong. If you can see the coil hooked off to the side, it's wrong. It should look just like that. I'll draw it from this direction as well. Like I said, the coil of the spring should be up toward the viewer, so if you're looking down at it, there's your eyeball, there's your beady little eye, looking at the back of the bar, you should see the coil hooked toward you, and then it does this underneath the bar, and then at the end, it hooks down, and it's centered, like I said. So it should be centered on the bar like that. You should only see it, see the wire in profile. Okay, what do you do if it's wrong? That's the best part of the story. It's actually very easy to solve, and you don't have to take the gun completely apart. So you can use almost any sort of instrument, punch, Glock tool, shadow tool, whatever, to reach down inside there and actually push that coil off to the side. So if I were to see that my spring was cocked off to one side, I could take my screwdriver and stick it down inside that hole and find the coil of the spring and just kind of push down. And if you push down like that, you can pop the spring back into a centered position. Might take a few tries, but that's no big deal because then you don't have to take the whole gun apart, all right? So again, if you see that issue, target that coil that's cocked off to the side with your little screwdriver or whatever, reach down in there, give it a little poke, and you will push that spring back into the centered position, okay? Super easy. You can see why we hate to return a gun for something that's so easy. Double check your gun, especially after you've installed or worked on something or detail stripped it or whatever. Just make sure it's correct because it's really easy to get it in the wrong place and have all kinds of phantom issues, okay? That's what we got for you this time. Be sure and leave us a comment. If you have questions, let us know, and we'll see you next time.